Hello friends, welcome to the series of lectures on digital marketing and e-commerce. I am Dr. Suchita Vishwakarma, Assistant Professor with Department of Management, School of Management Sciences, Lucknow. And today we are going to talk about credit card based electronic payment system, the risk and electronic payment system. Students, you might be remembering that in my previous lecture we had also talked about the various kinds of electronic payment system, and we had understood that there are various kinds of methods which are used in the electronic payment system, and we had talked about the e-cash payment method. We had also talked about the debit card methods, we had also talked about the smart cards and the e-wallets. So now since you know that there are various kinds of methods, every method has certain advantages and certain disadvantages also. So today in my today's lecture we will talk about the credit card based system. Obviously you all might be knowing that what credit card is. Credit card is basically a kind of small pocket card which is issued by the bank. The difference between the credit card and the debit card is basically that in case of debit card, which is obviously issued by the bank, uh, the card is connected to your bank account. That means whatever amount of money is there in your account, that particular amount of money you can use through that particular card either for the purpose of withdrawal or either for the purpose of transactions, maybe online or offline. While in case of credit card, the system is slightly different because this particular credit card, the credit cards obviously are issued by the bank itself, or at times it can be issued by private organizations also, for example JCPenney or maybe American Express so. But these cards are not connected to your bank account. So basically these organizations, these financial intermediaries issues you a kind of limit, maybe you can say a kind of loan for which you do not pay unless and until you use that money. So it is a kind of limit or loan that is that particular limit is given to you for using that particular card. Say for example, there may be a card having a limit of maybe 1 lakh, 2 lakh, depending on the customer's profile obviously. So from that particular limit you are using that you are required to do the transactions. However, the system of transaction in credit card is similar to debit card. That means you can use the credit card either for withdrawing the money also, or for doing the swiping it, or maybe doing it online transactions. But once you are using that money, once you have started using the money of the credit card, then you are required to pay certain interest also to the issuer of the card, which is not in the case of debit card. So this is the basic difference between the credit card and the debit card. However, the functionality of the debit card and credit card is quite same. So let us understand more about it. And in this particular topic, obviously we will be talking about the various kinds of risk which are related to the electronic payment system also. So let us get started. So what is a credit card? Credit card is a payment card issued to user, as I said, to the cardholder, to enable the cardholder to pay a merchant a merchant for goods in exchange of any goods or services based on the card's holder's promise to the card issuer to pay the amount of money plus paid plus agreed the charges. That means if I have a credit card, and let us say I have the credit card of, let us say, XYZ bank. Now that bank has given certain amount of money, and that certain amount of limit of the money that I can use, say for example a lakh of rupee. So now I can use that card for doing transactions maximum up to rupees 1 lakh, and for whatever amount, say in for example if I have done a transaction right now of rupees, say for rupees 10,000. So and I have used that particular card for doing the online transaction. So on behalf of me, the bank says gives a promise that yes, the bank will pay will transfer that 10,000 rupees to the merchant, since I have used the particular card for doing the transaction, and this is how the three parties are involved, that means the bank, the card holder and the merchant. So the card issuer, that is usually a bank, creates a revolving account and grants a line of credit, as I told you, the limit line of credit to the cardholder, from which the cardholder can borrow money for the payment to the merchant as a cash advance. So, whatever amount of money that the cardholder is using, against that particular amount of money, the cardholder is expected to pay certain charges, certain interest rate to the issuing bank. Now, there are various characteristics of credit card. So, let us understand all of them one by one. Firstly, obviously, it is quite a popular method which is used for not only the electronic payment system, but for also the offline payment system, and can be used as alternative to cash. So, whenever if in case I have gone to a particular place and I want to purchase certain thing and I do not have sufficient amount of money in my account, neither do I have it in the form of cash, then obviously I can use the card. So, it is alternative to cash, and since it is based on the credit limit, so it is a kind of loan which is there, and which I am obviously ready to pay for also. Then it aids in payment in domestic and foreign currencies. So, credit card is one which can be used within your national boundaries or even outside the national boundaries. So, it is very convenient for all kind of people. Then record keeping for all transactions is very easy, because the banks obviously keeps the records of whatever transactions you have done. It is the recording is obviously date and time and the merchant wise, and that particular record is shared even with the card holder in the form of the e-bill statements or even the bill statements, whatever you say. So, these are it becomes very convenient for the transactions to be recorded and tracked. Obviously, as I said that this amount is a kind of limit which is given by the bank. So, the cardholder is expected to pay certain regular charges. These regular charges could be in the form of maintenance charges, or it could also be in the form of the interest payment. Then obviously, there are certain grace periods or grace days allowed. That means, the cardholder is given certain days within which if he pays back the money, then there would be no interest. However, annual maintenance charges would still remain. So, that is one advantage given to the customer, that to return back the money of the issuing bank without payment of any interest. Then we have higher fee on cash withdrawals. Obviously, the credit card cards can be used, as I said, for the purpose of withdrawal or for the purpose of doing online or offline shopping also. But then the bank discourages the card holders to withdraw cash, and if the card holder has done the cash withdrawal through the credit card, then the amount of interest that is charged is comparatively much higher in case of the online or offline transactions. Then additional charges for delay in payment, as I said that after grace period, if the payment is done from the customer to the bank, then obviously the customer is expected to pay a slightly higher payment charges, which can be referred as a fine or the late payment charges or whatever. So, there are various advantages of credit card also. The advantages are obviously the purchasing power and the ease of purchase, because most of the vendors nowadays are accepting credit cards from the banks, and then they are very much sure that that the credit cards have a preloaded money into it. So, there is a lot of assurance to the vendor that if the transaction is done through the credit card, the money will be transferred from the bank's end to the merchant, and so this gives a lot of purchasing power to the buyer. And since it is accepted everywhere, so it brings a lot of ease of purchase concept also. Then protection of purchases is basically a concept that the vendor is sure that the money would be transferred to them. So, there is a protection of purchase also. Then building a credit line obviously, if I have done a transaction and if I am doing the regular payment to the bank and using it wisely, then there are chances that the bank would increase my credit limit over a period of time, because I am a genuine customer and using it wisely and doing the payments regularly. So, there is a chance of building a credit line also. Then it can be used in case of all emergencies also, that if in case I do not have the cash or I do not have, I am carrying having the sufficient account in my balance also. then also in such emergencies also the credit card is very advantageous. The next reason is the next advantage of credit card is credit card benefits. That means the credit card, after using the credit card, the card holders are given various kinds of benefits in the form of offers, in the form of I mean uh, tokens, or maybe the points which accumulate by using these cards, and these points can be redeemed in the form of cash or in kind, or in the form of coins. And even there are certain discounts which are offered to the card holders for using these cards at particular places, for example maybe petrol pump or restaurants or so. So, these are the various advantages of using the credit card. Then we have certain disadvantages of credit card also. The disadvantages are blowing the budget. Obviously, since when you have a credit card, you do not have the pressure that you do not have the money, and so there are chances that you can purchase something which is not of very much use, or is something which is beyond your budget. Then higher interest rate and increased debt, obviously there is always a pressure, that is there is a concept of psychological pressure due to the debt that you are carrying on your head because of the usage of the credit card, and because of use of the credit card you are also liable to pay the interest amount and the annual maintenance charges, and also. So, these are the various kind of disadvantages of credit card. Then we have you might have heard about lot of credit card related fraudulent activities also, and at times since credit card are these credit cards are sometimes based on the magnetic strip, and which are not very safe. So, this also increases the scope of fraudulent activity. Then cash advance fee and rates, obviously as I discussed earlier, that if in case the card holder withdraws money, then the charges would be pretty high. Annual fees, as I was referring to, that means annual maintenance charge is also there, which obviously depends upon the differs and depends upon the issuing bank, but then these there are different kind of annual fees also, which the card holder is required to pay. And then obviously the credit card surcharges. So, there are various kind of cess or service charges which are again required to be paid along with the repayment of the amount that you have used. So, these are the various disadvantages due to which still even today the credit card is comparatively less in use in comparison to the debit cards. Then we have various types of credit cards. So, let us understand all of them one by one. The first being the business credit card. So, business credit card are basically specialized credit cards and are issued in the name of registered business and can be used only for business purposes. So, the purpose of such kind of credit card is the amount of the limit amount is pretty high in this, and the issuing bank knows that the volumes which would be transacted would be more in comparison to the number of transactions. The number of transactions would be less, and usually such kind of credit card is usually used by for the B2B kind of transactions. So, there are a lot of other facilities or discounts or offers also which are given in case for the usage of such kind of cards. Then we have the second type of card, which is secured credit card. These secured credit card are the type of the card which are secured by its deposit account and owned by the card holder. So, whenever a card holder is using these credit cards, the information that is being transferred from the card holder ends to the merchant end is encrypted. That means all the information is very safe, and the information the data sharing that is happening is again encrypted, and so that makes it very convenient and authentic for anyone to use. These are basically used for the retail purpose. Then we have the prepaid cards. Prepaid cards are not exactly the credit card. These are the cards which I had discussed earlier also in my previous lecture, and these are basically in between the credit card and the debit card, which are issued by it could be issued by any particular bank or any particular financial intermediary, and are basically preloaded cards in which there are certain amount of limits which is used. However, the difference between the prepaid card and the credit card is that for using that particular amount of amount which is there which is loaded in the prepaid card, you do not need to pay any interest, or you are not required to pay any charges to the bank. So, these are basically popularly used for gifting purpose. That means, you have got x amount loaded in the card and you have gifted it to somebody, and the person to whom you have gifted is not incurring any extra charge also. Then we have digital cards. These are also becoming very popular these days, and digital cards are basically cloud hosted virtual representation of cards and are used in case as similar as credit card or debit card, and these are basically not held by any held physically. However, for verifying, for using these cards, your digital signature and digital verification is required, and once that has been done, then these digital cards can be used, and these are basically like the virtual in the form of the virtual card. Now, moving ahead, let us see that how credit card transaction process happens, and this particular flow diagram has been taken from the Visa card. So, over here you can see that once a buyer has made a purchase and the purchase has happened from the merchant's end, obviously the product will be delivered only once the merchant has further sent the request for authorization from the acquirer. That means, a person who is holding the details of the card, and the request of authorization happens, and then this particular acquirer further transfers the information to the credit card company, and then this credit card company further sends the information to the issuer of the card, that is the bank, and once the verification has been done, then the reverse process happens. That means, the issuer verifies to the credit card company verifies to the acquirer verifies to the PSP and the merchant, and so the verification is done, and then the delivery of the product is done. But then over here there is something more important to be understood, that in this particular process only the verification of the card has happened. That means all these intermediaries have only verified that yes, this is the genuine person who is holding the card, and the card has this much amount of money, but the real transfer of money does not take place. The real transfer of money from the issuer to the merchant happens after maybe 2 to 3 days, depending upon the payment gateway and the credit card company. So, the delivery of the good happens before the payment is received by the merchant. However, once the delivery of the good is done, then again the merchant sends a request for the payment to the acquirer, which is sent from the acquirer to the company, and then after debiting the account maybe it could be bank account in case of debit card, or it could be the credit card account number in case of the credit card, the money is transferred. So, that means, the merchant receives the money after 3 to 4 days 3 to 4 days of the delivery, or after the delivery of the product. So, this is how the credit card transactions normally happens in case of India. Now, let us have a look on the different kinds of credit card payments available. The first kind of credit card which is available is called the plain credit card. The second is called the encrypted credit card, and the third is known as the third party verification credit card. The plain credit card are basically the non-encrypted credit cards which are used for which are usually used over public networks, and they are not that secure, and it becomes very difficult to authenticate that who the customer is, and so these kind of cards nowadays are not very popular, and even the issuer of the bank has stopped producing such kind of cards also. The second kind of card is the encrypted card, which I was discussing earlier also, that the encrypted cards are basically those in which the transfer of data happens between the two parties, and these the information is shared through the information which is shared between the two parties is encrypted, it is completely coded, and nobody else has the access to such kind of information. As a result, these are very safe and confidential, and it makes it more comfortable for both the parties to do the transaction in such ways. However, as I had shared earlier also, that for encryption the vendor and the credit card company must have lot of safeguarding and security methods, which makes it costly affair also. Then the third is the payment using third party verification. So, in third party verification, the third party is a company that collects and approves the payment from one client to another, and once the OTP or the third party verification has been done, then only the transactions can get completed. So, these are the various kinds of credit card payments which are very prominent. Now, let us understand about the encryption and the credit card, how it happens. So, basically in case of encryption, as I shared, the encryption is a process in which the data sharing is restricted to only a few people, and the consumer and the vendor generates a public key and a secret key, and once the exchange of secret key is done between the parties, then only the transaction gets completed, because in such kind of transactions the identification, authentication and the verification happens between the two parties, and once this is done, this basically is used. So, it is very difficult to steal and use the data which is there in such kind of cards, and only a person who has access to all these OTPs or the passwords, then only the transaction can get completed. So, this is the concept of encryption. Then we have third party processor and credit cards. So, third party processor is basically, as I said, that these are the independent or autonomous organizations which are responsible for verifying the credit card and verifying the details and the identification and authentication of the card holder. So, if any person is preferring to use such kind of credit card, then basically they are the customer is required to request to the merchant for the OTP account number, and the merchant contacts the OTP payment server, and then the customer account number gets generated, and through the verification of customer's account number, and the vendor checks that whether the sufficient balance is there or not, and then only the transaction gets completed. Then let us also talk about the risk and electronic payment system. So, we know that since electronic payment systems are safe and secure, but in my previous lecture also I had talked about the various kinds of challenges which are being faced even today. So, that brings up a scope of lot of risk also, and the risk is not only at one party's end, it is at all the three parties, and that means the three parties being the customer, the merchant or the vendor, or even and the third being the issuer or the bank. So, let us understand all of them one by one. So, there are various kinds of risk at the customers end. The risk could be in the form of stolen payment credentials and passwords. That means, once you are using that particular credit card, debit card, e-wallet or whatever kind of transactions that you are doing, there are chances that the fraudulent or the activities, and there would be people who can steal the credentials, the details, my details, account numbers, account related details, or the passwords, and so, and can use the particular details for withdrawing money or doing the transactions, financial transactions. So, that is one risk at the customer's end. The other risk being the dishonest merchant for financial service provider. At times we have heard that people copy the credit cards and the debit cards and then use it for further purposes. So, there are chances that the merchant also gets collaborated in such kind of activities and starts doing this unethical activities. Then the third risk at the customer's end is that dispute over quality of service and product. So, there are chances that once the credit card payment or e-wallet payment or any kind of payment has been done, then there are chances that once the merchant has received, and if I have received any particular product which is not of good quality, and then the merchant may refuse refunding me back the amount. So, that is again one problem. Then impulse buying is a problem. Impulse buying is basically a concept where the customer tends to purchase more products that they have listed or that is actually required. So, that is also one risk. Then privacy risk, obviously, since I need to share the information with people from the with the various intermediaries. So, this is again a privacy risk. From the merchant's perspective, if you see, there are various kinds of risk, which includes the forget payment option. That means there are chances that the customer has done a transaction, but he has not done it properly, and so the transfer of money has not happened, or there are insufficient funds in the customer's account. As a result, the delivery has happened, but the amount has not been received, or even the slow financial service provider. There are times that at the time of payment the gateway system stops, or because of the problems related to internet connectivity or so, the transactions does not get completed, and so merchant may face problems. The other problems which are related from the financial service provider's perspective is that the credentials of the customer get stolen and the transactions has happened, and obviously in such cases the bank is usually held responsible for not stopping the payments, which obviously is not possible from the bank's end, and the payment conflict related problems between the merchant and the customer is also one problem, or even from the acquirer or the credit card to the merchant is also one of the problem. So, these are the various kinds of risk which are related to electronic payment system. However, the companies and the government is collaboratively taking a lot of efforts to reduce the payment risk, and there are various kinds of e-payment risk reduction methods which are used. For example, achieving and maintaining PCI compliance. So, there are basically standards which are set, which is required to be maintained by all the intermediaries, and if they ensure that, then obviously the chances of risk gets reduced. Then obviously there are chances of the companies also say that you need to recognize the signs of suspicious activities, and in case once you have recognized a suspicious activity, then obviously you need to stop the transactions. Then use SET, which is again a kind of SET is basically a communication standard protocol standard. So, by using this, and address verification system is also a automated fraud prevention method. So, these are the various methods which are, if used properly by all the intermediaries, would reduce the risk. We also have certain other methods also, like CVV, uses of proper CVV geolocations by IP address. So, for detailed understanding, you can go to these references and have a better understanding. Thank you.